our nation's history if it can't improve the well-being of our ordinary Guyanese. A good budget should ensure the good life for everyone, the opportunity to get a good education, find a good job, live in a safe and secure environment, put food on the table, have affordable and quality health care, save for retirement, and maybe have something left over for rainy days. For those of you who's sitting at home looking at this debate and wondering whether there's anything in this budget that will allow you to have that elusive good life the government keeps promising you, don't count on it. The odds of you winning the lottery are much better than getting this tone-deaf administration to listen to the cries of its people. Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC coalition have been in power now for over 3.5 years, and they have not lived up to the expectations they have created for themselves. They have failed miserably to deliver goods and services that are important to the average Guyanese. And the severe blows they received at the just concluded local government election were also a vote of no confidence in this government. Mr. Speaker, we recognize the importance of maths in our classroom. And for years, our teachers have been struggling to get these grades up. So maybe this explains the reason why the Honorable Minister of Finance is having difficulties projecting the growth rate of the GDP year after year. And why not? They actually thought they could do better. Coming after 8 consecutive years of economic growth, averaging 4.5% under the PPP administration, the obstructionist APNU-AFC opposition used their one-seat majority in Parliament to block, to block major transformational development projects like the Amila Falls Hydro Project and the Specialty Hospital, and voted against paying government workers, voted to cut the capital budgets of the Ministries of Works and Amerindian Affairs, and voted to cut other essential services. Now, under the stewardship of the APNU-AFC, the country is in disarray. In the 2015 APNU-AFC manifesto, they projected growing the GDP by at least 7%. They never got close. In the 2016 budget, the economy was projected to grow by 4%. The half-year report by the Bank of Guyana show real gross domestic products grew by only 2% during the first half of 2016. The final growth rate was 3.3%. In the 2017 estimates, the economy was projected to grow by 3.8%. This was later adjusted downwards to 3.1%, then to 2.9%. The final figures show the Guyana economy grew by a dismal 2.1% in 2017. Now we come to the 2018 estimates that forecast the GDP will grow at a rate of 3.8%. This was decreased to 3.4%, then to 4.5% in August when the midterm report was presented to this National Assembly. Now we're hearing that the projected growth rate for 2018 will only be 3.4%. I can wager you when all the figures are known, it is very likely that the economy will end up with a much lower growth rate than what is projected. This has been the kind of fuzzy maths coming from the Ministry of Finance year after year. And it's not likely to change anytime soon. But if you think this is incompetence, at the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Public Security takes a grand prize. Mr. Speaker, despite statistics released by the Guyana Police Force, which includes a 30% increase in robbery with gun in Berbice, we all know that criminal activities in Guyana have now reached critical level, with serious crimes such as murder and armed robbery being very common. The 2018 Overseas Security Advisory Council on Guyana's Crime and Safety Report, released by the U.S. State Department in May of this year, reported that corruption is widely perceived to be commonplace within many government agencies. Did you hear that, Mr. Speaker? It says corruption is widely perceived to be commonplace within many government agencies. And it goes on to say, police officers often are reportedly paid off by criminal elements and are alleged to work with criminals by either assisting or protecting them. That report was featured in the Kaicho News of May 18, 2018. So what is the minister doing about this?
Nothing.
Instead of giving the Guyana Police Force the resources necessary to wage an effective war on these criminal elements, billions are misappropriated to SOCU to continue the political witch hunt of former PPP ministers, a vindictive act by this government. Now, instead of focusing its priorities on keeping our citizens safe, our Minister of Public Security occupies his time on trivial issues, closing bars and nightclubs at 2 a.m. in the morning, even as we approach the festive season of Christmas, and seizing audio equipment from persons playing loud music. Mr. Speaker, while I am pleased to see monies allocated to the renovation of police stations and to improve accommodations for police ranks, $400 million is not enough. They need much more than that. And judging from the high demands for police presence and the lack of transportation in the hinterlands, the allocation of $2 million for vehicles and boats are also inadequate. While in opposition, the APNU-AFC promised to reduce crime, a task the Minister of Public Security has proven incapable of. The People's Progressive Party supports every effort to put an end to this crime wave, to get illegal weapons off the street, and to use SOCU to go after real money launderers and drug dealers, as that agency was established to do. There is nothing in this budget that offers the good life to our men and women in uniform. We expect our police officers to keep us safe, and we demand much of them. But government needs to recognize that police officers have families that also demand much of them. For that reason, we support better salaries, incentives, and working conditions for our law enforcement. We call on government to honor its campaign promise and to give them the 20% increase in salaries they were promised. We also urge the non-caring government to restore the 1 month's Christmas bonus, the joint services once enjoyed and relied upon under the People's Progressive Party. And please, don't wait for the 2020 election budget. Do it now. Mr. Speaker, on June the 9th, 2017, the Georgetown prison went up in a blazing inferno. The entire prison was burnt to the ground. 1.5 years later, the minister wants to rebuild that prison at its present location, in the heart of the city that has always been a security risk to the residents of Georgetown. Now, amidst that tragedy, an opportunity presents itself to move this eyesore from the city of Georgetown and replace it with a modern, high-rise professional building of some sort. The Georgetown prison sits on prime real estate in the heart of the business district, land that could be easily sold or leased to at a premium price to investors. Why not use this opportunity, Mr. Minister, to relocate the prison to a more isolated location that would allow for a secured, supervised perimeter outside the prison walls to prevent escapees, while at the same time enhancing the security of those who live and work in Georgetown. It is bad enough for government to have misdirected priorities. It is even worse to be visionless. Mr. Speaker, in his presentation of the budget, the Honorable Minister of Finance mentioned 2 infirmaries now in operation at the PAMS and the Hugo Chavez Center for Rehabilitation. But I wonder if the Honorable Minister is aware of the corruption and abuse that's taken place at the Hugo Chavez Center. Something I have written about extensively, and nothing is being done. While it is a noble thing for government to assist the most vulnerable among us, it is also incumbent upon them to ensure the accommodation is safe and residents are not extorted and abused. I'm calling for a forensic audit of the Hugo Chavez Center and the removal of the person who runs it. Mr. Speaker, Region 5 is the largest agricultural area of any region. It is the largest rice producing and cattle rearing area as well. But Region 5 is prone to flooding. The rainy season is fast approaching, and many of the drains in villages throughout the region are still clogged. For 2 consecutive years, the region have been requesting the purchase of 2 long boom excavators to alleviate this problem. And for 2 consecutive years, these excavators have been struck off the regional budget. Yet, 35 million of taxpayers' money was wasted this year on a pet project of the REO, a model farm built on 45 acres of land that was illegally obtained by evicting 45 cash crop farmers from land they occupied for many years and bulldozing their crop. Quite frankly, I am disgusted to see an additional allocation for $15 million being made available to this project in 2019. That will benefit no one else except the REO, who now spends days on his farm away from his office and the job he was employed to do. Another misdirected priority of this government. Where is the justification for this wasteful expenditure, Mr. Speaker? The health sector in Region 5 also has major problems like the rest of the country. Regular shortages of basic drugs and the lack of essential services are adversely affecting the quality of care provided to the people of the region.
I'll remember you have 5 minutes remaining.
As it is, the Fort Wellington Hospital is unable to provide x-rays and ultrasound services so essential for identifying medical issues and restoring good health. And for the past 2 months, residents who visited the dental department are still without adequate service. Mr. Speaker, for those Guyanese living in parts of the Caribbean, Canada, Europe, or the good old USA, this budget will make it more difficult for them to return home and invest in the country of their birth. Apart from the World Bank report published a month ago that shows Guyana dropped 8 places for the ease of doing business here, ranking 134 out of 190 countries, this government is now shamelessly targeting remigrants. It is estimated that there are more Guyanese living in foreign countries than those residing here at home. A high percentage of those are better off financially, more educated, with skills and expertise needed here to reduce our dependency on foreigners. The remigrant scheme may have been flawed or abused by some unscrupulous characters, but instead of fixing the problem, this budget will now punish and discourage every Guyanese wanting to return home by taking away the duty-free concession on vehicles and replacing it with a $5 million tax credit. This is another devious scheme to rake in more taxes. So let me give you an example, Mr. Minister. Let's say a remigrant brings back his 2-year-old vehicle with an engine capacity of 2,500 cc, which is normal in the US, valued at $4 million. He will have to pay the following: customs duty 45%, excise tax 110%, and VAT 14%, which adds up to import duty of $9,885,000. Under this new remigrant scheme, instead of getting his vehicle tax-free, the government gives him a tax credit of $5 million, and he's left with a bill for a whopping $4,885,000 to pay GRA before he gets his vehicle released from customs. And I challenge the Honorable Minister to dispute this figure. In the beginning, the government officials traveled throughout the diaspora begging Guyanese to return home, promising investment opportunities and incentives.
Honourable members, you have 2 minutes remaining.
Instead, we see incentives being taken away and irresponsible remarks being made by the PNC chairperson, Minister Vala Lawrence, that drives fear in Guyanese who now believe that this PNC-led government is once again embarking on a policy of state-sponsored nepotism and racism. As a remigrant myself, I can assure you these policies will only discourage Guyanese from coming back here. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this budget creates the illusion that government is providing the good life when in reality it's the misconception and deception they have been propagating for years. Apart from a shameless $1,000 increase in old age pension and public assistance, there's nothing much in this budget for public servants, nothing for sugar workers, nothing for rice farmers, and nothing more for any group of people in Guyana. This budget can best be described as fluff on steroids, window dressing to hide the precipitous decline in the economy in the 3.5 years of the APNU government. Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid we cannot support this budget in its present form. Thank you.
I thank the honourable member.